Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Space Snacks. Today, I am joined with James Canterbury. Hi, James. How you doing?
I'm well. Cyan, it's great to see you. It's great to be with you today.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you because you are a teacher, a science teacher, and I just feel like we have a lot in common. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I teach middle grade science in Central Ohio, and for us right now, that means seventh and eighth grade. We are one of the last districts to bring in the sixth grade in with middle school, so we'll be doing that here in about. We've already decided to do that, and we're going to do that in another year. This upcoming year will be our last year where we're just a 7-8 building. But
Okay.
this year I was primarily an eighth grade teacher. But before that, I was a broadcast meteorologist. So my first career was in television and in meteorology. And after about 7 or so years, got out of the business and went back to school, and which is what I wanted to do anyway. When I was first doing my undergrad, was I wanted to teach science, and went back and got all the schooling that I needed, and I just finished my 7th year teaching young teenagers in a very interesting time.
Right. Very interesting. And so, meteorologist and in doing the weather. And
Mhm.
so, how did you first get into that then, if you knew that you wanted to teach when you're in undergrad?
Yeah, so it was kind of odd, really. I had declared a major, and they didn't have the major that I wanted in the specific science that I wanted, because I wanted Earth and space, but they didn't offer Earth and space. But I
Ah,
really liked the university, and I had family who went there before, and I'd been there so many times, it just felt real comfortable, so I went. I declared a major, and I was kind of struggling through the chemistry. And one day, after at the end, towards the end of the day, the neighbor of mine, a neighbor friend in our dorm, he walked out of his dorm and shut the door. Was walking down the hallway, and I noticed that he was wearing a, a button-up shirt, tie, a sport jacket, and shorts. I thought, where are you going? I mean, I understand this is college, and we do weird things sometimes, but what are you doing? And he said that the campus TV station is holding their tryouts for their upcoming season of the television news. So they had a live nightly news show every night, and I was like, oh, that's right, yeah, we do have that, don't we? And I got to thinking, I was like, wait a minute, they have weather, don't they? And he said, yeah. And I've been a weather geek for a long time. And
me
he said,
too. I'm a weather geek.
you can try out if you want. They're always looking for people. And I said, well, when are tryouts? And he said, in an hour. And I was like, all right, I'll tell you what. You've got a car. I've got $5. If you drive us to McDonald's, I'll buy you a hamburger, and I'll take my USA Today weather book, and I'll just try to bone up on symbols and words and shapes, and I'll go. So he tried out for sports, and he got it, and I tried out for weather, and I did awful, but I was the only one to try out, so I got it, and that was it.
That's so funny because one, I had the same, I think I might even still have the same USA weather book that you're
Yeah,
talking about. And
it's
then
great.
two, we didn't have we had a class in undergrad that was media and television productions. And I don't know if you went to undergrad in Ohio, but I went in Pennsylvania, right at the Ohio border at a school
Okay.
called Edinburgh. And so when I graduated, I ended up being a TV editor for the 5, 6, and 11 o'clock news for the first couple of years. And I ran
Ah,
in studio cameras for the camera person. And, and
what a
I just,
small world. Yeah, that's
yeah.
great. I started in I started in West Virginia, so I started in Clarksburg, which is
Mm-hmm,
a really really
mm-hmm.
small town, but it's the local CBS for Morgantown, where WVU is. I didn't attend WVU, but yeah, that we are the local CBS for WVU.
I was a CBS affiliate in upstate New York because that's where I went back home in Rochester and worked for a CBS affiliate for a couple of years. And then I was like, I got to go back to school because I wanted to be a science teacher, basically become a college professor.
See, I thought that, oh, you know, weather, that meteorology actually gives me a larger classroom. This is great. I can talk to hundreds of thousands of people at one time, you know, and that was my thought going in. Yes, it's not a classroom. You know, you're presenting and you're sharing and you're informing and you're warning if you need to, but it's not a classroom. There's not immediate feedback. You're not, you know, doing all the things that an educator does, at least in a traditional setting. You know, maybe now we rethink that as we get into remote learning here for the end of this year and into next year. Who knows what that looks like? But you know, the immediate feedback, the opportunity to help and guide and really get to learning. That's not what meteorology, you know, and broadcasting really is. And I was like, well, as the years went on, you know, my heart kind of fell for it and dropped. My emotions for it and my desire for it, they were waning. And I was like, well, then I don't need to find an analog for what I wanted to do if it really exists. So let me just go back and really do it, you know, and now I'm much happier, much more fulfilled, and it's a tough job, as you know. But you know, it takes those special people to do it, and I think we are, and we're doing well.
You know, one of the things I want to talk to you about, because why space? And so I know it's space and Earth. Earth sits in our solar system. It's one of the planets, because a lot of times you talk about, people separate kind of what happens here on Earth from, you know, the larger narrative of space.
Yeah.
And so, but what was it about space and Earth and space science that you knew that you wanted to teach in that area?
I, like a lot of teachers, I had a wonderful opportunity to be taught by some amazing and inspiring teachers myself. And the one teacher really got me into earth science was a high school teacher of mine when I was a sophomore. His name was Sean Mulkey, and he brought all the earth science, but in a way that made me want to care about it. And I thought at that point, well, now I know what my favorite science is, but do I want to teach it? And I was able to, again, really just be blessed with having some amazing teachers. And I thought, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. But it's tough to find earth or space science majors when you go to, you know, your undergrad.
Right.
And I think that's that way because I think we're still stuck in a Cold War era style of teaching science, which is you do all the physics, you do all the chemistry, and you do all the biology, and you mix in some computer science, and those are the science pillars. Yeah. Well, those are the pillars that they felt would give us that advantage during the Cold War. They didn't think the earth science would give us an advantage. Well, we're not in the Cold War anymore, and unfortunately, fortunately, we're not in the Cold War anymore. Unfortunately, we're still stuck, I think, in this educational model that this is how science has to be taught.
Yeah, and you know, I would have to agree with that.
What we've done to our students is we've made them then, in their heads, compartmentalize. This science doesn't touch this science.
Yeah.
And this science is a part of this other science.
What I find interesting about that, though, is that physics, chemistry, biology, when you want to go and apply them, you apply them in the earth sciences. And so I always thought that was flipped, that you should take those classes, but your senior year should be earth science, because now you can apply the geophysics, you can apply the geochemistry, and you can look at how the earths and the systems apply to biology and where things grow and why and all that stuff. So it never made sense to me that you had earth science in, you know, first in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then you flipped over to these other sciences.
Right. And what we've done even further, I think, in the middle school, and maybe it's like 8 down to kindergarten, is we've really taken the space science out of where, like, we used to concentrate space science with Earth, Sun, Moon, and seasons and tilt and things like that, but also planetary motions in the solar system. We've taken those standards, at least in Ohio we have, and weather as well. We've taken them out and then spread them very thinly across several grade bands.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I think it just feeds into what you're saying, though, is that if we spread them out at the younger grades, you get a little bit of weather in this grade, and you get a little bit of Earth, Sun, Moon in this grade, and you get a little bit. I feel like they lose the connections, though, like you're saying. Like, you need to take all these mechanisms and all these reactions and all these systems and then apply them to the Earth system. And because, you know, we're the cradle of intelligent life as far as we know, and we still don't quite know how our planet works. And so kids, and when I was designing my Mars class, I thought there's two things that kids really, really just intrinsically love to talk about besides themselves. One is weather, and two is space, right? So why not make that the thread of a year-long story in learning science? And so
I love that.
We're going to Mars, man. And you are in a team of 4, you know, you're in a team with 4 students. And as far as your team is concerned, no other teams in this room exist. I am your mission control, and you are my crew, right? And you got to look out for each other. You got to help each other. And if you want to succeed, we're going to have to learn this stuff, you know? And so instead of all the physics, all the biology, all the, you know, the chemistry, all the earth science in these pillars that we've been teaching for years, I took all those standards and I broke them up. And I thought about, okay, which of these topics are they going to encounter first as they're training to be a Martian astronaut? What do they need to know first? So I put all those in my first quarter. And then the second quarter became, okay, well, now we're launching. Now we're on our way. We have left the Earth. We're moving, you know? So what are we going to need to know while we're traveling to Mars? And then the third quarter was, we've landed. We're going to live here now. What do we got to? We got to grow some food, right? We've got to protect ourselves from radiation. We've got to build a hab. We've got to, you know, do all that stuff. So that's how I paced that year. And I was blessed with a group of students who they bought in wholeheartedly and they bought in immediately. And we just had a blast that year. We built rockets and we launched them on the football field. And we had a hydroponic system set up and then turned it into aquaponics. We added an aquarium with fish, and they took care of the fish and they took care of the plants. And they, you know, tested the water every day for pH and for temperature and fed the fish, and they owned it. They owned the classroom. They owned the space, and it turned into it wasn't a science class. It was we're on a mission to Mars, and every day was something new, and every day was something special. And I still hear back from these kids on that was not only was it my most favorite science I've ever taken, it was my most favorite class I've ever been in, you know. And no one ever asked me, why are we learning this, you know? Like, when was the last time as a teacher, you know, like you were able to get the kids to be like, I'm in, I'm just going to do it. This is so awesome. Like, I got to protect my crew. We got to fight off the radiation, or, you know, or whatever, because if we don't fight off the radiation, we don't get to Mars. And it was awesome. It was phenomenal.
So when did you do that? Because, and if you want to watch, there's on your YouTube channel, there is the story of your Mars simulation in your class. Was this, how many years ago did you do this?
I did it not the current year that we just finished, but I did it the year before. As I said, I'm primarily an 8th grade teacher, but because of our growing demographics, our growing population in our district, we just got too many 7th grade classes for the number of teachers that we had. So we had to do some shifting, and the opportunity was presented to me to teach an advanced 7th grade science class. And I thought, oh, okay, well, sure. I mean, let's see what I can do. And as I was going over the standards, I thought, wait a minute, this all lays out perfectly for this story. The 8th grade standards are too chopped up. They're not as cohesive as I would like. There's a lot of struggle there to try to come up with a story for what they want us to teach in 8th grade. But for 7th grade, it was as if, you know, a script writer just laid it down in front of me, and I just was, yes, this is it. This is it. Let's rework it. Let's just move it around and put it in an order that makes sense. Let's
You
go
know,
for it. I
when
love it.
so I imagine now there are students that obviously word spreads, and so they're all, you know, the ones that know you are probably wondering, are we going to the moon? Are we going to Mars? What's happening when they're trying to get your class?
So I got about 85% of those kids. I got them back as eighth graders this year. And the first thing I told them after like, I'm so glad to have you again. This is going to be great. After that, I felt like I had to apologize to them. Like, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to have this great thread of a story because the eighth grade standards don't lay out very well for that. But I felt so bad for them that there was one lesson series that I thought
Mhm.
I could turn this into Mars.
Mhm.
I could at least give them a taste, you know, of of what we did last year and how much fun we had and how much they learned and how much they were into it. So we did a little, like, we did a space snack of Mars,
Ah,
and
yes.
they really enjoyed it, and then of course we had to get on to other topics that didn't quite really fit in, but yeah, we have the our population continues to grow, and we're still trying to figure out, like, we're getting more and more kids, so we're still trying to figure out, you know, who teaches where and what. So it in a world where, you know, I guess it's a good problem to have. More people are moving into the district, and more people are taking advantage of all the options that we offer. Um, but you know, that sometimes means that you don't get to necessarily teach your first choice.
Right.
But you know, once things settle and maybe we know where everyone's going to land, and you know, the population surge, as they do everywhere, you know, population surges and then it levels out. So maybe after things settle in a few years, or hopefully sooner, you know, we can get back to maybe trying that again.
You know, one of the things I want to talk to you about is in this unique time with you got a YouTube channel. You are continuing to cook for your students, and you came up with the tectonic plates, which I love the name. And so, tell me about that and why you decided to do this.
Sure. So the building where I teach is it's a very high need building.
Mhm.
It's the high need middle school in our entire district. And in getting to know my students, and listen to them, and really hear what their challenges are, what their obstacles are, how I can help, um, and in a way that doesn't seem like I'm still, you know, telling them what to do. You know, how can I help you get over some of these obstacles, or maybe teach you a way to get around them, and then maybe you put your own spin on that. Um, in getting to know my students, I discovered that there was a surprising number of students who were expected to cook for their families.
Ah, yeah.
And I teach young teenagers, like,
Mhm.
some cases 11, because they haven't quite turned 12 yet, all the way up to 14. And there's a high number of kids, at least higher than I anticipated, who were expected to cook for their families 2, 3, 4 nights a week.
Wow.
And so I thought, wow, when we had to close the buildings, these kids are still having to cook for, you know, for their families, but they're around their younger siblings now all the time, and
Mhm.
if their parents have to work from home, they're with their families 24/7. So why don't I maybe, you know, the one thing they are doing is they're getting online, whether it's to play Fortnite, or it's to do their homework, or it's to, you know, try to FaceTime with friends, or you know, or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And so I thought, well, okay, if they still have to cook, can I make it fun? And maybe I can show that I can break down that fourth wall a little bit between student and teacher, and let them see me as a husband and a dad,
Yeah.
and person at home, you know. And so I thought about some recipes. You know, what do I cook at home? That are there versions, or are there recipes that are not very complicated, that I could show them all in one take, you know, real time. This is how you do this. This is how you open that. This is when this goes in. I try not to use too many, you know, too many knives. Or if I had to cut
Right.
something, typically I cut it before I start the episode, so it's just kind of all there. And you know, I give them a little bit of, you know, be careful, check with your parents, you know, for safety and all that. But then, hey, let's make breakfast. Here's how I make breakfast. Here's an omelet. Here's a, here's a little dessert you can make. Here's a quick potato soup and grilled cheese sandwich that you can do. Boom, done, no problem. I'm not trying to be a chef because I'm not a chef. I was just trying to share with them in this time where we can't really get out and do as much grocery shopping as we'd like, or
Right.
we got to start looking about, what's around the house? What can I use? And just started from there. And it was a lot of fun to do. My wife was my camera person, and she did great. And it's a lot of fun. And now the year's over, so we've kind of paused the series, but did 4 episodes, and it was a lot of fun. Got a lot of good feedback.
I have fond memories of, as a child, cooking for my family around that same age, and really kind of discovering how to make eggs. And really, breakfast was the big one that I would come in and make breakfast for my family. And those are some of my early memories. And then also cooking with my mom, who was an excellent cook. And I can just imagine, I don't even know what would have happened if I had had YouTube when I was that age, with everything that I would have learned. And so thinking about exploration, if you could go anywhere, Moon, Mars, to the ISS or beyond, where would you want to go and why?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. I mean, I'm not gonna get to Mars. I'm almost 42. I'm 6'3". They don't make those things for tall people. So
wait a second now. I'm older than you, and I'm still planning on going, well, at least to the moon. I don't know about Mars, but there was a guy in my finalist astronaut class who was at least 6'2" or 3. And
really,
he was a finalist. Like, he was tall. And his big thing was, because this was still going to be on the Soyuz, was whether or not his hips would fit. And so I was literally a finalist for the astronaut program with him. And they came back and were like, we got to measure your hips one more time to make sure that if we select you, you can fit into the Soyuz. But I'm wondering now with the, SpaceX, what the height minimums are. I imagine they've extended those. So you never know.
I remember seeing those Soyuz pictures, and they got stuff all around their heads and everything. And I'm like,
they're like this.
They're like this, and I'm like, I don't know. I was not created to bend that way. I mean, I'm not 6'9" or 10, but I mean, I just had this idea that, man, they're really in there. And I thought, well, I got to be too tall. There's no way I'm going to fit in there. But maybe the ISS, because my kids love it. We have the ISS app on our phone, and it tells us when the visibilities are for where we live, and if it's not cloudy, we can go see it. Because that's where, I mean, you can just hang out there, and you can do science in there, and you can learn in there, and you can look out the window and see the Earth from there. And it probably doesn't seem like it's that far away, but the ISS would be great. But man, I got a heart for Mars. I mean, if I could get there and know I could get back, if I just knew that I would get back, I'd go tomorrow.
You'd go to Mars? Oh, that's great.
Oh yeah.
What would you want to eat on Mars?
I wouldn't have to be the first person there. It doesn't bother me. I wouldn't have to be, like, I got to put my footprints there first. I'm not concerned with that. Just to be there, and to, like, okay, let's get to work. Let's start colonizing. I mean, let's start, have and food, and can we do it? Let's go see.
That's really funny, because I feel the same way about the moon. I don't need to be first. I just want to go. And what would you want to eat on Mars if you could go to Mars? What would you want to eat there?
Something that I could cook. It really interests me to grow and then cook what I'm growing. That really interests me, because you're going to have to be pretty good at doing in situ on Mars, because there's not a grocery store nearby. So that would be probably like maybe a rice bowl. And since rice bowls they're really workable. You can give them whatever flavor profile you want. You can go Mediterranean with it. You could go Asian with it. You can go, Chinese, Korean. You could go, you can Mexican. You can do a lot of flavor profiles with a rice bowl. So, and hopefully they'd be growing a lot of some grain like that to
We,
sustain them. So yeah.
that's one of the things that you bring up when to talk about food and versatility. You could have a simple amount of ingredients, but as long as you have different spices to kind of like enhance that flavor, you can really go in a lot of different directions with just a few things if you have the spices. So who would
Right.
you want to eat this rice bowl with and why on Mars?
Well, I don't know if he'd want to go to Mars because he's even taller than me, and he is, or at least he was, 6'9", 6'10". Um, I really am fascinated with and have been a big fan for 30 years of The Undertaker, and his real name is Mark Calloway. And I would love to, have an opportunity to eat with The Undertaker. If you're not familiar, he's been a professional wrestler in the WWE, but before it was called the WWF, in back when I started watching it. He's protected this character, this mysterious character, for 30 years. And while a lot of people in the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of wrestlers have started doing podcasts or interviews where they kind of show who they really are, the real person. At a time when a lot of wrestlers are doing that, The Undertaker never did. He really protected this mysterious character, and it worked for him on camera. And so just up until very recently, he started letting people into his actual, like, this is who I really am, Mark Calloway, this is who I am. And it's just, that fascinates me because now after having been, he's been my favorite wrestler for 30 years. Now I get to learn about who he is, and he's finally opening the door. So this would be an excellent opportunity to sit down around the table and go, man, how'd you do it? Like, what's it been like? And who are your friends? Who are you really friends with, like backstage, or who do you really not like? Not just out there for the camera. Or tell me about your personal life. Tell me about your faith. Tell me about, like, just want to learn more about you because I've watched you for such a long time. And he'd probably want barbecue because he's a Texas guy. He'd probably want barbecue. So I'd have to learn barbecue or just wave the white flag and go, I don't know how to do this. And we'll just cater. Let's cater barbecue.
I gotta say, when I ask people these questions, by far you had the most interesting one, because I was like,
really?
What? And then I was like, did he mean a different person? Are we talking about the same person? And the funny story about this is that 20 years ago, I was in the WWF, and I loved The Rock, and I loved and because I was cooking a lot, and I loved that because he'd come in and he'd be like, "Can you smell what The Rock is cooking?" And so I would throw these dinner parties, and my friends would come over, and my one friend would always walk in and he'd be like, "Can you smell what Cyan is cooking?" And we loved watching WWF together. And so I think that is such a great choice when you think about persona and people, and who we sometimes portray versus who we really are. And, and how do you break that down?
Yeah, I think about your favorite musician, your favorite band, your favorite movie star, right? We as the consumer public, we fall in love with like what we see on the camera, and it's only when they do interviews, or they're willing to do interviews and sit down and talk, it's when the fan gets to really know more about their favorite, musician or artist or author. Well, we really haven't gotten to know him, because he's protected this persona for so long, and now that he's finally letting everybody in, it's really cool. So I'd have to pick Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, for sure.
That's so awesome. Now I want to talk to you, since we're almost to the end here, but if you have time, we'll go a little bit over. I want to talk about your recent analog experience, the Mars habitat. And so what was that, and how did you get involved, and what was that like?
Well, there's as you are aware, because you did analog missions yourself, there are a lot of analog habitats around the world. but there's not many south of the equator. And when I heard about this mission, it was going to be virtual, of course, because of COVID-19. And I thought, wait a minute, a virtual analog mission. This is going to be the closest I'm ever going to get to be an analog astronaut. So let me jump in on this. And the Habitat Mars is it's an analog research Mars analog research facility in Brazil. And it is run by Dr. Julio Rezende. He is a professor of engineering at one of the universities there in the town of, I think it's Natal, Natal. And we follow each other on Twitter, and we just kind of been connecting through all the space science that we love, and the different launches coming up and the SpaceX announcements and things, and we just kind of connected that way. And he put out on his Twitter feed, he put out hey, an advertisement. I'm getting a crew together to do the 40th mission, analog mission, and it's going to be about a Mars, how we're going to live on Mars. And I thought, okay, I'm home a lot now. Let me put my 2 cents in there and see what happens. And I was able to join the crew for the mission, parts of the mission. I was my role was called a guest researcher, and what he wanted me to share with the crew was he had seen the video that you had referenced earlier about my Mars class, and he said, "Do you have any other materials? What did you use to guide your course?" And I said, "Well, I have a website, a class website that teaches my students how to do the end of year project, which is build a hab on Mars." And he said, I really would love for you to share that with and be on this crew, the 40th crew. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. That's great. I mean, I love any opportunity I can to get to share, how we did the Mars class and how much fun it was and how much authentic learning took place. And so I got to share and field questions back and forth with members of the crew, people from 7 different countries, scientists and teachers and students and engineers. It was wonderful to get to not only share, but to listen to them and their feedback and how we could make this Mars experience even more authentic, for students next year. And I got to also hear from some other researchers on what they're doing. And the gentleman from Austria is developing an inflatable hab. And I got to just listen in on his lecture and how that might shape what we do on Mars and how, what that might do for SpaceX's plans to get us there. It was all fascinating. And the only thing that could have made it better was to be in Brazil in person, but, not really possible right now. But wow, it was great to hear from these folks, this international panel of enthusiasts and teachers and engineers and students, and just really feel like you were, trying to further the mission, the human mission, and whatever learning we could, we shared back out to SpaceX, and it was neat. It was a lot of fun. I wish I could have, done more in-person stuff, but it was great.
And that's fantastic. And I know that I've been in talks with him also, and I'm trying to remember because he's watched the show a couple of times, and especially early on, and we were connecting, and I'm trying to remember if that's how we originally got connected, because he wanted me to be on that mission and I didn't, but somehow I saw you and then on Twitter. And so there was something I can't remember, because I don't think we've recently been following each other. I don't know if you were following me before, but I know
I don't think so. I think there are 2 wonderful Martian teachers. They're not from Mars, but 2 teachers in Canada that I got connected with through Twitter about a year and a half ago, when I was trying the Mars class, and I found these 2 teachers who were already doing aspects of these classes anyway, and I was like, oh, this is great. So Amanda and Julie from Canada, I got connected with them, and we started sharing resources, and we were sharing, oh, this lab is great, try this. This demo is great. This opportunity for enrichment, this is awesome, try that. And so I think we might have gotten, connected in that circle of space educators
Yes.
And when I saw your name, I was like, wait a minute, I know this name. I know this name. Am I allowed to say why I know this name?
Yeah.
Okay. 10 years ago, or right about 10 years ago, Discovery Channel's
The
The
Colony.
Colony, season 2, I was an avid fan. I watched every episode, and I was devastated when they said that they weren't coming back with a season 3. I watched every episode. I now bought Colony season 1. Colony 2 is out there, but it's like $50. So I got to
Really?
wait for the price to come down, but I'm going to get it whenever I get it. Then I'll have both of them. And I just loved it because it was like, okay, here's a situation. It's like Mars. It
Oh
really
yeah.
is. Here's a situation. How are you going to get out of it? And it's in situ. What are you going to do? You know? Now, just fell in love. Like, yeah, I got to do it. And then when I saw your name on the Twitter feed, I was like, that's got to be Cyan from Colony. And sure enough, that's true. So
That's so funny. So,
yeah.
Ron, if you're still watching, this is Ron Sparkman, who's a great science communicator. And we were talking about people who recognize you out in public. And he recently got recognized. And it's funny because the Colony, I would be in the most random place and people would be like, I know you. And I'd be like, what? And they'd be like, the Colony. And that happened for years
Yeah.
afterward. And it's funny because I'm in contact with all of them, and it's
are
right
you?
now when we were ending the show was
Oh,
we shot 10 years ago exactly, you know, and the whole premise of a virus and all of that.
I would.
And so
I
I'm
would
in
love
a
to be in a Zoom meeting, and I would never be off of mute. I would just sit there. I'd just watch it. I'd love it.
well, we started watching. There's a group of us that are my friends now that didn't know me back then. And they're like, what? You're on the show? We have to watch it. So they basically, we've been having this, you know, quarantine video night where we get together and we watch an episode or two of The Colony. And they're like, I can't believe you did this. And it's funny because most of the stuff that I did ended up on the editing room floor. It didn't even end up in the thing. And
isn't that always the way? Isn't that always the way?
You know, it skewed a little bit towards the younger of the group. But I
would agree.
Yes. and I had, did you ever see my cartoons that I did that the Discovery Channel published on the website?
No.
I gotta
Are they
grab
still
things.
available?
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I have right here, which is funny, The Colony, my DVD of it. But there was, here it is. This is funny because food, I ended up doing we're talking about food. I did 90% of the cooking on The Colony. And I created the cartoon guide to The Colony. And while I was in The Colony, I sketched. I don't know if you can see this, but I did sketches of all the different like scenes, even ones that got cut out. So and the Discovery Channel was great because they were like, "What are you doing?" While I was in our habitat. I was sketching in the corner, and then they saw them. They're like, "Oh, we have to publish these." And so when every episode came out, they would put on their website a set of cartoons that I had drawn to go with it. Yeah, it was crazy.
Was that picture when poor George got leveled and he's laying there on the ground?
Right.
Oh no.
Oh, we watched the Becca kidnapping and stuff like that. And
that was so, when I watched it the first time, I was like, that's traumatic. That poor girl I don't know why, like she couldn't scream very loud. And I was like, there's nobody gonna say, they can't hear her. There's no way.
No,
and sure enough, they carried her off.
And so when we watched that episode in my group, I texted her on, I think it was on Instagram, because we're Instagram friends, Twitter fans, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
And she was like, and we just kind of had this funny exchange back and forth about The Colony. And just 10 years later.
I was going to ask you a question. I mean, I've got questions, but I didn't know how long you wanted to go. because
No, if you have a question, that's
we're already over.
fine.
But I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Oh no, I said if you have a question, now's the time to ask for sure.
Oh, now, okay, here we go. All right. So, well, one of them was going to be, do you still keep in contact? And it's awesome that you still do. I love that.
I'm not
Another
close to
question.
everyone, so I'll tell you who I was the closest with.
Mhm.
While shooting the show, George was my buddy. George, we thought was crazy
Yeah.
in the beginning, but George had
Right.
mad skills in the end, and I love George
Yeah,
because he was
that's great.
funny. But at the beginning, we all thought this guy's a plant. We got to get rid of him. And then, but in the end, George was awesome. I got along great with Sally and Becca. And so the girls, we were tight. And Amber, I actually have gone to see Amber up in Montana and hang out with her. And every once in a while, she will send me, just kind of an update. But while in shooting the show, I was really close with, definitely mostly Sally and George were my two like really close connections. And then I got along with Becca and DeVille. DeVille, just in funny because DeVille popped up recently on Facebook and said, "Hey, how you doing, Cy?" And I was like, "I'm doing great, DeVille." And then not so much Reno, a little bit, but not really. And then Jim was even further kind of not as in contact. And then Tick came in at the end. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. And you and Jim had such a tender moment there.
Yeah.
When you found the what I guess was, do they think that it really was his kids who made the art, or was it like names that were kind of close?
No, I think it was actually their kids that did that.
Okay.
And then there was another time, see, things that didn't end up in the show, Discovery Channel still published online little clips. So I don't know if you've seen them, but there are two things for you to look up. On my YouTube channel, I have 4 clips from the colony. One is of my solar oven. So if you haven't seen Cy's solar oven from the colony, that was the best thing that I built, and it never made it in. And then there's another one of me and Jim together. And like you said, me and Jim had really some great moments. But towards the very end, when he was hiding from Bopa, and I was like, "Take me, I'm going." I think that was one of the things that,
That was one. So I had 2 questions left, and one of them was and I don't want to spoil it for folks who haven't seen it yet, but at one point, there is contact with Vopa.
Yeah.
And they are not able to, to take everybody, but they do come in and they're like, "Okay, we've got a couple seats here." Yeah. And Cyan is like, "Bip, take me." So you get in, you shut the door.
Yeah.
What does Vopa tell you?
Nothing.
And this could be like behind the scenes stuff. This could be, out of character, in character.
Nothing.
You
literally shut the door. There was another person next to me. We drove off. That was it. Nothing else.
Did you ask them any questions?
So everything else that happened was post-production. That was not real for me.
Okay. So you're in there.
Sign a thing that says that we can't, but I'll tell you my experience. And so I don't know, because I can share my experience and what happened to me. And I literally got in the car and it was like, okay. And then we drove off and I went and ate. And there was a buffet waiting for me. But I got And when I got in, there was another girl next to me, and that was it. And we just drove off. And everything was fine. And so it wasn't until I saw the live production that I saw what they did.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
What was the person sitting next to you? Were they in a Vopa suit?
They were in a hazmat suit also.
Okay. Okay. And then the other question I had was, at the beginning of every episode, there is a placard that says, when in danger, or if there's a medical issue or things like that, the colonists do receive assistance. So clearly there's a crew there.
Right.
Not only production crew, but there's a crew to assist. What does a typical week look like from the perspective of you and the volunteers getting ready to encounter that week? Like, what What do they do?
You
They
know,
tell you stuff? Do they teach you how to do something so that later you can try it on your own for real? Like,
so we lived in the compound 24/7. We couldn't
yeah,
leave, cameras, all of that stuff. And so it wasn't everything that we did. And so you have a producer and a camera person that comes in and videotapes you, but they really it was definitely unscripted. We did not
yeah,
know what was going to happen. We didn't know any of that stuff. But what it was, Discovery Channel definitely wants you to solve real world problems because it was a
mhm,
build show. And so they would say,
right.
okay, the only thing that we would get is like energy this week. We really want you to figure that out.
Oh,
What are
okay.
you going to do? And so those are the kinds of things that were kind of the narrative of trying to solve. First one was water. What are you going to do? So if you look at the first episode, it was us trying to figure out how to get water. Food was a
Yeah,
narrative that kind of ran through the whole time, like how are we going to continue to eat? But there were definitely things that they put in front of us to challenge us to solve
yeah.
that week, if that
Okay.
makes sense in the best
Oh no,
way.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had you seen season one? Did you kind of know what? Did you have that input as well? Like,
I
okay,
did.
I
I
kind of know
saw
what I'm getting into.
So I was one of two people who didn't originally audition. I didn't even know this show existed. And then they
Oh,
contacted me and said, "Hey, somebody thinks you'll be great for the show. Why don't you come on?" And so that's how I ended up on The Colony. And so I didn't even know about it. So when they asked me to come on, I went and watched season one. And I thought, oh, I can do this. It's a bunch of, engineers hanging out, building stuff, not a problem. And then I go into season two, completely different. I was like,
they,
what?
compared to they dropped season one in a completely outfitted Walmart.
Yes, I know. And then season two, we were like, what
They
is
gave
this? I
you
got there.
nothing. They gave
I
you
know.
nothing. Like,
It
you guys
was,
got rated 3 times in the first episode.
oh,
Like, in season one, the Raiders only came inside that building 3 times all season.
it was, it was the most shocking, crazy experience I have had by far. And so those of you that might be listening, it's called The Colony. It's on, somebody said it just recently came back on Netflix or something. I don't know.
Oh, that
But
would be great.
it's quite the adventure, especially since it's all about a pandemic wiping out society.
Right. And I
Mhm.
love that it's show. That's what got me.
Say it again.
It's but the build and the problem solving and the
Yeah.
engineering and the
Right.
trial and error, that stuff's real.
Yeah.
All that's real. And that's what drew. And of course the people are real. And
Right.
even though maybe in the back of your head you sometimes can remind yourself, yeah, this is a simulation. But you're living it.
Right.
You're there 24/7.
And
The
you know
mosquitoes
that,
and the heat and all that.
all of that. And that was really my first analog. When you think about living with a group of people
Oh,
in
for
an
sure.
area that you can't leave. And so then I did that in 2010, and then I did the high seas habitat for 4 months. And so The Colony we shot for 2 months living in that situation. And then I went to 4 months in the high seas habitat. And I remember auditioning for that to get selected as a crew member. And I'm like, yeah, I was in The Colony. And they're like, what is that? How is that even relevant? And I'm like, oh, let me tell you. Crew
How much time do
psychology,
you have? Let me tell you.
problem solving. Like, it is the ultimate in, how to survive in craziness.
They need to bring it back. They
Yeah.
need a third season, and they needed it yesterday.
Yeah. It would be nice to see something like that come back. And so there were some areas where, situation wise, where it got real. People got hurt. And you're like, wow,
Hmm.
And so, but anyways, we're coming up to 50 minutes, and I loved
Oh yeah,
talking
I'm
with you,
sorry.
James. No, this was perfect. It fit in because The Colony, like I said, this is really where I became into survival food And then when going into the Mars simulation, I felt really equipped when it came to the colony is very appropriate for space, survival, food, everything that this show was about. So
Absolutely.
I want to say, can you give
And I was super psyched to get this opportunity.
can you tell the people who are watching, so Ron and Nigel and Ann, thank you for joining in. Anybody who leaves a comment, you'll be in the running for a recipe postcard. I don't have it in front of me. Oh, wait, I actually do. This is the one. Ooh, it's a fun one. So it's a coffee recipe postcard that I will mail to you for just letting us know that you're here and leave a comment. And then, James, how can people follow you?
There it is. I like that. So how do they follow me? So my my Twitter handle is at Mr. MR _ Canterbury, and that's it. And you can follow along there. It's I try to stay as, you know, as Earth and space science and teacher and, you know, cooking, you know, as possible. And as world events happen, you know, at the very least, I try to, you know, post, well, this world event is happening, and here's how I feel about it. How do we stay together as humanity, and, you know, and how do we help each other through, which is a theme for, you know, our shared experience on this planet and any other rock we decide to rest on, is how do we help each other through. And how do we maintain our humanity and maintain respect and maintain love and those things. So, you know, it's not going to be totally sanitized of, you know, like a global event or national event, but I try to keep it as, you know, teacher, space science, cooking, Mars, SpaceX, you know, as possible.
And that's great. And so follow James on Twitter. And thanks again for joining us today. And James, thank you. This has been great. I look forward to maybe being in an analog with you one day, or cooking for real together.
Let's do it all.
Thank
you for having me. It's been a great thrill. It's been so much fun.
Well, bye, everybody. I hope you'll join in. Again, Space Snacks is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. on Facebook. Bye.
See ya.